Hello, everyone. It's CJ with Rogue 420, and I'm very excited today to be delivering another interview on Rogue 420. Now, today's guest, I'm very excited to have him on. My guest is Morris Beegle. Morris is a longtime entertainment industry and hemp entrepreneur. Morris is the founder of We Are for Better Alternatives, which is a multi-brand umbrella company, and he's also the producer of the Northern Colorado Hemp Expo, which is now in its fifth year. Based in Loveland, Colorado, Morris's company is involved in a wide range of industrial hemp-related enterprises, including Tree Free Hemp, a hemp paper and printing services provider. So, Morris, welcome to Rogue 420.
Thanks, CJ. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you, Morris. I'm very excited for our listeners to learn everything that you're doing in this industry with hemp, the expo, so many great things going on. Morris, before we jump into it, why don't you share with our listeners, how did you get started in the hemp industry?
Well, I've been a supporter and I guess a consumer of cannabis since high school. And as far as like the hemp side of things, I really didn't get too familiar with the history of that until 1995. I've been in the music business for a long time, and I started in the kind of the mid to late 80s when I got out of high school and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, went to the Music Business Institute, which was an industry trade show. It was the only an industry trade school, not a trade show. I do trade shows now.
Yeah.
But it was a trade school, covered kind of all aspects of the industry, from marketing, promotion, audio and video production, copyright law, publishing, licensing, a lot of technical production stuff. And being in the industry in Atlanta for 4 years, I moved to California for 5 years and then moved back to Colorado in 1995 and started a record company called Happy Scratch Records, which was kind of an umbrella production company that did CD and DVD manufacturing, packaging. I did events, licensing, merchandise, physical product distribution. And at that time I moved back, there was a store called the Hemper's New Clothes that was in Fort Collins, and I started hanging out there. And there was a book by Jack Hare, and the name of the store was The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And the book by Jack Hare is The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And right. That's where I read that book back kind of in that 95, 96, 97 time frame, and became familiar with what hemp was. And it was really, it's cannabis. It's all cannabis. So you got hemp, you got marijuana, but it's all cannabis. And kind of the history of how things transpired from, we've been using it for 10,000 years, since back in early Chinese days. And that's how the first paper was made. And we made rope and sails and used it in food and building materials, and learned a whole bunch of history that I had no idea about. And then how it got targeted and kind of rolled into the whole marijuana tax acts back in the 30s, and then the stuff that happened with the Controlled Substances Act, and how it's really been just misinformation and propaganda that's come out over the course of the last 75, 80 years. I think all that is out there now, but that's really how I got familiar with it, was back in the mid 90s. And I really didn't do a whole lot as far as advocacy or participating in the hemp industry or the cannabis industry until 2012, when Amendment 64 passed here in Colorado. And during the time that was making its way through Colorado from the early part of 2012, and the movement was building on it, there was a hemp clause included in that said Colorado farmers could start growing hemp. And at that time, I was like, hey, I could start a hemp merchandise company, and started Colorado Hemp Company, about ColoradoHempCompany.com back in like February or March 2012, and started making some hemp t-shirts and hats, and partnering with some other merchandise companies like Wicked Hemp Footwear, Hempies, Hemp Mania, both companies that had hats and wallets and bags, and really started getting into, who was making hemp products at the time, and wanting to make my own hemp products and partner with Colorado companies and national companies that were jumping on board to legalize hemp across the country. And 5, 6 years later, we're doing a lot of events. We're doing hemp paper and printing. We're creating products. We're doing advocacy. We're promoting education and information, and trying to legalize it on a domestic level without obstruction and restrictions and overregulation, and then beyond globally, right. Cannabis, hemp, whether that's high THC, low THC, psychoactive, non-psychoactive. I truly believe that there's no reason that this thing should ever be criminalized, that people should go to jail for it, and farmers should not have an opportunity to grow it.
Oh, I completely agree. And here's the thing, as far as your work, I mean, you're involved with so many companies and organizations, so congratulations, for that. And I think that whole advocacy thing, as far as the movement that's taken place right now, I mean, we're seeing that potentially hemp, agriculture, textiles, everything that you're involved with, you name it. I mean, the economic potential that's there with this industry is just truly incredible, Morris.
There's no doubt about it. There's so many different industries that a hemp ingredient can go into. And when we finally get enough acreage and processing and relieve this bottleneck that's kind of there in the U.S. right now, the small communities, people that are producing this crop, and in areas where initiatives have been taken and governments and economic redevelopment dollars have been allocated, you're going to see tremendous growth across the country, and you're going to see an agriculture system that gets rejuvenated.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about some of your advocacy movements. So, what do you see on the forefront as far as legalization, state level, national level? What's on your current radar as far as any type of concerns as far as regulation or the industry?
Well, right now it's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. We've got over 30 states. I'm not sure what there is now, maybe 34. If you go to votehemp.com, they've got pretty specific information as to who's got state laws where hemp is now legal. And within that, because of the Farm Bill in 2014, there was a clause in there, Section 7606, that allows states that have legalized hemp to launch pilot programs through departments of higher learning or higher education and departments of agriculture. And within that, there's been broadened programs depending on some specific state regulations. That's the case in Colorado. It's the case in Oregon. It's the case in Vermont. It's not real consistent from state to state. There is this federal Farm Bill section that everybody says that they're basically compliant. Whether that truly is, it would have to be challenged in a court of law. But, it's just a little bit of protection that's opened the door. And until we get real legislation passed at the federal level, and there's some opportunities this year, there's a act called the Industrial Hemp Farming Act that has been introduced year after year after year. It's actually been introduced since like 2005. Ron Paul was the original drafter of this, and it was real basic, and it's since been updated, and it's since just kind of been stagnating year after year in the House. And there's a lot more momentum this year, and now there's going to be a Senate version of it, but there's language problems that would inhibit the industry from really growing if those language issues stayed in this bill, giving additional authorization to the DOJ and to the DEA and to the FDA. And there's problems with these agencies having any sort of oversight of the hemp industry when this crop, this plant needs to be regulated just like corn, just like soy, just like wheat, just like any other crop, and all parts of the plant. And that includes all the extract from the flower. That stuff needs to be considered a food product, which we've got that done here in Colorado, and we're leaders on being able to push that. So this cannabinoid extract is looked at by the Department of Health more or less just like any other botanical extract, like a vanilla that you would add into a food product. So there's progress being made, but there's still a lot of things that need to be really ironed out language-wise on the federal level with the legislation that's being proposed. And supposedly there's a bill that's kind of the complementary bill from the House to the Senate. The Senate bill for this Industrial Hemp Farming Act is making the modifications that the industry has raised questions about.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because when you think about it, under, the previous administration, some different guidelines were given. I know under the new administration, it was like, all about let's make America great again. And I think that history, if the administration would study it and understand that hemp has a huge history in the United States and really could even help that purpose. But my concern is this. My concern is that we have an AG that is fixated on bringing back the failed war on drugs. That if we could get the administration to understand the power and the future of hemp and how it could affect so many different industries and really spur economic growth for our country, Morris.
I totally agree. Sessions is certainly no friend of cannabis, whether that's medical, recreation, or hemp. I don't think that they really care as much about hemp. They've got bigger things to worry about than farmers trying to grow hemp as a rotational crop to their corn and their soy. There might still be some fears out there, and there are in particular conservative states that are still resistant to legalizing hemp, that's a cover for marijuana, and hemp is a gateway to marijuana, which is a gateway to opioids. There's still this mentality out there that's the 60-year-old plus typical white male conservative stuff that's been fed for so long, and it's hard to change those opinions and those beliefs. But we've made progress. The industry's made progress. There's still a ways to go, and I guess the easiest way for people to change their mind is when they've got a sick family member and all of a sudden they start taking CBD or a cannabis oil, a medical marijuana oil, and their family members are getting relief, and it's like, wow, this is the best I've felt, and I don't have to take Percocet or Ambien or whatever pharmaceuticals that they're taking, because cannabis relieves all that and they don't feel like shit about it afterward. They don't have the side effects.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, think of it specifically, how much money is going to be poured right now into the opioid crisis, right? That's what we keep hearing about, that, well, we're going to fund it with, this millions of dollars and throwing money at the situation instead of looking at some of the states. I think Colorado's recent statistics as far as, reducing opioid addiction, reducing opioid related deaths, it's pretty significant of what cannabis has done for those individuals. And one other aspect I want to throw out there, Morris, is that, with the tragic events in Florida and learning about the young age that these kids are started, being prescribed the SSRI drugs, those dangerous drugs, versus a natural plant that could help with a lot of different health related issues, autism, neurological disorders. I just wish we could move past that and understand that. But you're right. I think national approval, I think the latest statistics was like above 60%, favored, and it's continuing to grow.
Yeah, it's 60% plus for recreational approval. It's 90% plus for medical now. And if people actually know what hemp is, and that it's non-psychoactive, it's not a drug, it's never been a drug, it's never qualified to be on any schedule anywhere on the planet, that's 100%. So there's a lot of bureaucracy there, and what we're doing now with our events and our advocacy and our education is just do it. If you're in this industry, just go for it. If you're making cannabinoid CBD products, just put them out there. And I don't think that it's going to get shut down. I'm going to the Natural Products Expo in Anaheim next week, which is the biggest expo on the planet, basically 100,000 people over 4 days, and thousands of vendors and exhibitors and sponsors, and all this natural products, health and supplements, and the CBD and the extract stuff is making its way in there, and those folks are excited. This is like the biggest new product, the biggest new compound that's hit the natural products market in decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not there's no way to stop the momentum. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take to get everything in line from a legislative standpoint and a legal standpoint. Because once we figure that out as a hemp industry, let's just say as a cannabis industry, and this is something good to lead into. So there's a GW Pharma bill that's being worked on here in Colorado that basically is being worked on by various attorneys and groups throughout the cannabis industry, as well as GW lobbyists, that could set the precedent as to how this is going to be regulated nationally. And what it is doing is it's carving out a swim lane for the pharmaceutical industry, because they're going to get into cannabis medicine, cannabinoid medicine. I mean, there's several pharmaceutical companies that have been doing this stuff for years and years and going through the clinical trials. They got a bunch of money. They're going to have their specific medicines that can be prescribed by doctors and hospitals. And a lot of customers or a lot of consumers prefer to get their prescriptions that way. So consumers should have that choice.
Mm-hmm, right.
We accept that. But at the same time, the dispensary model for medicinal and recreational needs to stay intact. And then the hemp side of things with natural products, supplements, food, where cannabinoids are going to be included in that. It's really a food ingredient. Everybody's going to keep their little channel, and it just needs to be defined so everybody gets to play and the consumer has the most choices possible. That's what we're trying to establish now here in Colorado. And if we can establish this here, and the question is everybody skeptical about the pharmaceutical industry and the FDA, and with good reason.
Mm-hmm, right.
So if we can spell it out legislatively and we show that there's been good intention from GW and the pharmaceutical industry, and that they're being above board and honest, that they only want their own channel, their own swim lane, and they don't give a shit about everything else, then we're going to be hopefully good to go.
Bingo. You nailed it. Keeping it to the consumer level, because states, you have to be real careful, because some of the states that have legislated for this, getting the government involved isn't necessarily the right step for this industry. That you have to be careful what you ask for. Is it in Canada that, for example, where, and I believe is her name Jody Emery that does quite a bit with up in Canada. But anyway, where I'm going with this is that, as far as making it such only for big business, making it that, that only certain individuals and companies get a play in this field. And what you said is just so important as far as keeping it to the consumer, keeping it to the individual. It's more about medical freedom, liberty, the ability for individuals to make their potentially utilize and grow their own cannabis. And again, as states legalize, you just have to be careful how you advocate and what specific laws get passed state by state.
There's no question about that, because when it comes to language and bills, stuff is slipped in there all the time, and you've got lobbyists doing this and doing that, and there's certainly examples of GW and other pharmaceuticals working on the lobbying side to position stuff in certain states that's a disadvantage to the hemp industry and the recreational medical cannabis industry. And they're getting in there, and they've got tons and tons of money. The pharmaceutical industry has way more money than the cannabis industry, and we have to be very careful and make sure that the language being crafted is the right language that provides us the protection that we want. So again, there's certainly reason for concern when we're negotiating with these folks, but at the same time, if we've got good lobbyists on our side and good legal representation, which I think that we do here in Colorado. We've got some really good people that are point people on the ground and at the Capitol. I think that we can put things into place that's going to protect our industry and protect the overall cannabis industry, and we can give the pharmaceutical industry their little slice of the pie, and you guys go do your thing, just kind of stay out of our business.
Right. I like that. I like that a lot. Well, let's jump into it, because I know you've got a lot of exciting things, projects, initiatives, that you're working on. So I believe that there's an expo coming up April 6th through the 7th. Do you want to share about that for our listeners, please?
So NoCo Hemp Expo, and you can find this out at NoCoHempExpo.com. We're going into our 5th year here in Colorado. It's in northern Colorado. The Ranch Events Complex and Budweiser Event Center in Loveland. And this year, we are expecting anywhere from 5,500 to 6,000 people. So this event started off in a bar in 2014 with 330 people, and 15, 20 vendors, and then has grown into, in 5 years, almost 6,000 people over 2 days, and 150 plus vendors and 100 plus speakers and multiple different programming segments. We've got a hemp summit for high-end investment and stakeholders and CEOs and legal information. We've got a global hemp village. We've got a farm symposium. We've got a workshop demo area. We've got another main stage called Let's Talk Hemp with lots of panels and presentations about all aspects of the industry, from farming and processing and manufacturing and compliance, insurance, banking, health, wellness. If you can think of it, we're going to be talking about it under that roof, most likely.
It looks like it's very much a whole 360 approach to it, looking at it from all angles, which is a beautiful thing. So yeah, I'm definitely going to look into this more. I'm going to look at my calendar to try to get freed up to attend this. I'm that excited about looking at the information. And you mentioned earlier that booth space, because we do a lot of networking here at Rogue 420, that the booth space already bought out for this year's event.
Yeah, we started a waiting list. Yeah, we started a waiting list at the end of December. So we sold out of space technically like 5 or 6 weeks before we did the year before. Totally outgrown the space. We've had a waiting list, and if you've been on that waiting list, several people actually have made it in off the waiting list because people who had signed up initially then don't follow through and complete their registration and put down their deposits. So that's kind of the way it works in the trade show business. Everybody jumps on, and then some people jump off because they can't make it happen for whatever reasons. And as long as you're diligent and you put yourself in line, a lot of people have been able to make it in. We're really excited. I mean, we're going to have a great group of exhibitors and sponsors out there, and a great group of speakers as well.
Yeah, you know what? I'm thinking about going out there, maybe doing some interviews. Maybe meeting with some of these organizations, these companies that are doing some cool thing, and it looks like it's going to be a great event. So I'm very excited for you and excited to attend. Morris, what else would you like to share with the listeners about your company, about the advocacy? You take it where you want to go, man.
So Colorado Hemp Company is really kind of a mirror image of our parent company called WAFBA, We Are for Better Alternatives. And Colorado Hemp Company is really about marketing, brand development, events, advocacy, paper and printing. We've got a paper and printing side that goes along with our marketing and events side. And we've created a hemp paper printing channel, and we work with a paper manufacturer, and we've manufactured some of our own, and we're doing a variety of things moving forward, trying to expand the hemp paper market because there is a real demand for it. And I can tell you the last year I've been getting so many requests for different types of paper products, board products, packaging. And the way this whole paper industry thing has gone the last 100 years is pretty crazy. With once wood pulp really and timber industry really started dominating back in the late 1900s, early 2000s, all the paper mill equipment and manufacturing stuff really converted over and was built to process wood and turn that into pulp. And the natural fiber side of things with hemp and flax and kenaf and jute and some of these other things that were traditionally used for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years got weeded out. And this other type of biomass is so much better for the environment than utilizing wood pulp. But the timber industry has been subsidized for over 100 years. It's similar to the fossil fuel industry, and they put on a really good front about being, sustainable. And, if you look at the tree count today on the planet, it's more than it was 100 years ago, and I don't necessarily believe that's true. But what's happened is we've chopped down all this old growth to make paper out of it and planted it with more GMO tree crop stuff that are tree farms that can then get chopped down every 8 to 15 years, depending on what different types of trees are grown there. And nothing lives in those ecosystems. They've basically just killed these ecosystems the timber industry has, and people don't realize the devastating effect that has on the entire global level. we don't have to be chopping down forests to make our newspapers or our magazines or our copy paper, when we can really be growing that stuff and utilizing biomass, whether that's hemp or canaf or flax. It's not just hemp. Hemp is a solution. It's a good solution for a lot of things, but there's other crops that we really need to get back to looking at incorporating into our rotation and rejuvenating our soil and making our ecosystems living and breathing again instead of dead.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, I brought up the site so that way our listeners can see it. So treefreehemp.com. And very cool. So the approach to it, the different products and manufacturing, that's very exciting work there. So how can our listeners connect with you? I'm going to put the links up in the video description. You're on Twitter as well. Is that correct? Your personal Twitter handle?
Twitter and Instagram. I mean, I've got there's a Morris Beegle account. There's Colorado Hemp Company accounts. There's Let's Talk Hemp. There's Tree Free Hemp. There's NoCo. I've kind of got this crazy brand development thing going on here, and it's, I just keep creating these things. I've also got some guitar cabinets coming out made out of hemp board.
Awesome.
That are going to be introduced at NoCo Hemp Expo. So I keep like having these babies. But it's fun.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is a good problem to have. I guess the best way really is going to ColoradoHempCompany.com or CoHempCo.com. That's really the hub. We're going to be launching a new website there so the listeners can know that. We've been working on building a new back end. We're going to be launching a new store with new T-shirt designs and hat designs. We're going to be building out our store more this year, promoting not only our own branded product, but a lot of partners that we've been working with and their branded merchandise as well. So we're excited about that. That's going to be kicking off this year. And so, if people want to hook up with me, just check out ColoradoHempCompany.com.
Awesome. Very cool. Morris Beegle, everyone. Morris, thank you so much for being on Rogue 420 today. I'm excited. I definitely want to have you back on again, just because you've got so many different exciting things going on. Would love to even work with some of those vendors. So if they want to come on, any projects that you're working with and talk about the project, I would love to be happy to share that information with our listeners.
Well, thank you, and keep doing what you're doing, and I'll be happy to connect you with whoever you want to be connected to in the hemp industry. We're all about trying to get the message out there. There's a lot of great leaders in this industry that are out there collaborating, working to speak the truth, and we're trying to refine our messaging and be real positive about the direction of this industry, because again, there's so many good people doing great things in this industry, and that's really our focus is working with good people, getting the right messaging out there, changing people's minds, whether that's legislators' minds or whether that's consumers' minds. That's what we need to do as an industry, and that's what we are doing as an industry.
Very well said. Very well said. All right, Morris, thank you so much. And for all our fans, again, all the links will be posted in the video description. That way you can go check out his work. You can follow him as well. So, Morris, thank you once again for a great interview.
All right. Thank you, CJ. Take care.